What's up? I'm Furr. This is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, and today we're going to talk about how to niche down your offer to make more sales and profits. It's Monday, which is the day that I open up my mailbox to answer your questions about copywriting, marketing, business building, and more. So let's just dive right in with today's question. All right, today's Mailbox Monday question is, I'm starting a coaching practice and working on my offer and clients. What daily, weekly practice can I implement to continually refine and niche my offer? I sometimes find I try to make one thing too detailed. How can I take one big thing and niche it down into separate offers from W? And by the way, if you have a question you'd like to have answered in an upcoming Mailbox Monday episode, check the link in the description to ask Roy your question. All right, first things first, just want to be clear about your offer here. It should be a quality offer, it should solve a real problem, it should unlock a real opportunity, and it is best here if it appeals to multiple identities. If the core structure of the offer solves that problem or unlocks a real opportunity for multiple people who may experience that problem or want to pursue that opportunity, they want to fulfill whatever desire. Some good example would be fitness, right? A gym membership could be it could solve a real problem, or it could fulfill a desire for a certain, like it could fulfill a desire for a large number of different identities, and then it's about how do you fit that different offer into different identities. So we're going to talk about something called identity niching here, and this is going to be really useful to you in the context of this question. But first things first, make sure that your offer is actually something that could actually switch between industries. So there's this saying, there's riches and niches, and I know that this idea is what's driving this question. And yes, it's true to an extent. When you focus on a specific niche, then what happens is people within your audience, within that niche, say, oh, this person has built this thing for me. And because they've built it for me, I believe that it's more likely to work for me. And as a result, I'm going to buy from them versus somebody who's built something that's much more generic. And I would say, like, this idea of what to do on a daily or weekly basis to niche down your offer, that's probably like way too much, actually. I say maybe too much. It's probably way too much. Really, niching should be something that happens like I go into one niche, I dominate that niche, and then I go to the next niche over and I dominate that niche, and I go to the next niche over and I dominate that niche. And so, for example, you know, I'm thinking anything having to do with homes in Lincoln, Nebraska. I wouldn't even necessarily say, okay, how can I do Lincoln this week? And how can I do Omaha next week? And how can I do Beatrice the week after? And how could I do Fremont? And how could I maybe do Kansas City? And how could I like span out into all of these geographic areas versus, okay, how can I really establish myself in East Lincoln? How can I really establish myself in East Lincoln? Okay, and then maybe Northeast, or I want to go to Southeast Lincoln, okay? And then I want to go to South Central Lincoln, or Far South, or I want to go and identify like these tighter niches, but you only go from niche to niche after you've firmly established yourself in one niche. And the flip side of this whole idea about there's riches and niches, flip side of the whole idea is a really powerful offer can often be one where you can, in quotes, mail the phone book. And that obviously comes from a different era. But Gary Halbert, famously, one of his biggest successes was the Halbert's coat of arms. And the coat of arms letter that he wrote was basically something that they could adapt to last name after last name after last name. And by the way, that's really easy to do. They could adapt it to last name after last name after last name and mail everybody in the phone book, right? And having something that's that broad market of an offer can also have its advantages. So be careful about this idea that there are riches only in niches. Oftentimes it's easiest to create a very profitable business within a narrow niche, but also you're limiting your scalability significantly. Now, in terms of adapting the offer, it's probably easier than you might think. So you have a coaching offer. That's what the question said. Have a coaching offer. Okay, what 90% or even greater than 90% of the offer is exactly the same regardless of the niches that I go to, or across 3 or 4 niches that I go to, across the first 10 niches I might go to, and then what 10% needs to be changed. So you're not necessarily changing 100% of your offer. You're not like, you're not all over the place with your offer. You're not trying to create brand new offers for every niche. You're saying, okay, what can I create for this offer to, for example, solve this particular problem that is a 90% solution regardless of who you are. Going back to the gym example, it may be like, a core lifting program could be 90% the same regardless of anybody, a core resistance training program. And then how do you change the 10% based on people's different fitness goals? What do you put on top of that core resistance training program? All of that, right? So it's not 100% new for every person, it's 90% and then the 10% change to personalize it for each niche, each audiences. And just generally here, I'd say that 10,000 niches is not your answer, right? A new niche every week is not your answer. Again, like, don't just get too scattered by this idea that there's riches and niches. You're far better off saying, okay, I'm gonna pick one single hyper-focusable target market and I'm gonna narrow in on them. Going back to the geographic example, if I'm a real estate agent, I'm gonna say, I wanna become the person that people buy and sell houses from and to in this particular neighborhood, right? And I'm going to identify what neighborhood I need to have to hit the transaction volume that I want. And I'm going to get hyper-focused in a couple different neighborhoods so that it seems like every house that goes up for sale in that neighborhood, it has my name on it. It seems like, if you want to buy a house in that neighborhood, you're going to be interacting with me, right? And getting that specific to that hyper-focused of a niche before I try to expand out, right? And so if you tried to be the niche for this neighborhood, in 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 this neighborhood, and you're, I said the niche, the real estate agent for all of those neighborhoods, right? That's going to be far less effective than really forming true relationships with people in a specific neighborhood. So consider this, I think that the question may have opened you up to a little bit of misguided action here. If you are just trying to pursue new niches every week, I maybe am misunderstanding that. But I do want to say, really what you want to do is, if you are going to commit to niching, try to find one ideal niche and really focus on that and build that before you move on to the next and the next and the next. Now, as we're talking about niching down, I do want to acknowledge a few different types of niches really quickly. You can think about this first group as price niches. So generically, price is cheap versus expensive, budget versus luxury, right? So Walmart as a department store is different than Von Maur, or Neiman Marcus as a department store, right? It's a very different audience, and those are different niches. One example of this is Toyota versus Lexus, right? So Toyota had this brand that was a successful car brand, and they said, how can we make an extremely nice car also? And so Toyota and Lexus can be sold side by side, and it's two different niches, right? Selling essentially the same thing and based on essentially the same systems and so on. There's also, as we're getting into something that feels more like coaching, there can be price niching of do-it-yourself versus done for you. So how can you create some programs that allow people to do what you offer themselves versus other programs that allow people to do what you offer with you, right? Or you do it for them, right? And there's these different levels of service that are established in price niching. Group versus one-on-one, right? Am I able to do this as a group coaching? Am I able to do this one-on-one coaching? How does that establish different price niches within my current audience, right? Without even changing who your audience is, you can price niche within that audience. Also, focus niching is something like, do I want to be the person who focuses only, using a marketing example, on video sales letter funnels for information publishers versus I can write funnel copy, right? Funnel copy, or even I'm a copywriter, right? This broad versus narrow. If you can find a group of people who want to hire people who write VSL funnels, for a group of people in the information marketing niche who want to hire people who write VSL funnels, well, that narrow focus niche, it can provide you an advantage versus somebody who's offering just this broad copywriting service. Audience niche is any kind of targetable characteristic. So, you can audience based on geographic, you can audience based on people they follow, you can audience based on media that they read, you can audience based on, and this is maybe not the most useful thing. In fact, you can easily get misdirected here by trying to say like, oh, I'm going to niche down by focusing on everybody in Nebraska versus everybody in California, right? But that's not really a niche. Unless you're focusing on state-oriented merchandise, maybe, or something like that, right? So there are different targetable characteristics that are going to be more or less useful. What is going to be more useful is something like an identity niche. And some audiences are representative of identity, and some audiences are not representative of identity. So something like income itself, if you can target based on income, that's not really necessarily representative of somebody's identity, right? It's representative of someone's, they happen to have that level of income, versus if you can target based on people who subscribe to the Proud Millionaires email list, or people who read the Rob Report, or people who visit a certain luxury website, or people who've bought Louis Vuitton purses, or people who've bought, like, there's different identities established by those things versus people who have a certain net worth number, right? Beliefs and values can be things like, religion. It can be things based on culture. It can be things based on political causes supported, right? It can be based on, identity can also be based on different roles that they play. So there's roles they play at work, there's roles they play personal. We're going to get into more of this identity niching in just a second, so I don't want to get too lost here. But the big thing is, like, they're going to answer, if they answer the question, who am I? Who am I? Like, oh, I am this person. And so I could say, I am a copywriter. I am a marketing consultant. I am a podcaster. I am a YouTube channel owner. I am a information publisher. I am all these different things, right? If you establish that who am I statement, a title, you give them a title, that is where we start to get into identity. And so something like millionaire may feel like a title even more so than $1 million net worth. And that might represent some kind of identity, especially in a culture where that is thought of as a meaningful benchmark, right, of wealth accumulation. So somebody who identifies as, I'm a millionaire, right, that may be something that is an identity versus a net worth of $1 million. So here's how to identity niche your offer. In the context of everything that you're doing, right, who are your biggest audiences? When you look at who your biggest audiences are you able to identify consistently the people within my customer base, right, or the people that I interact with, the people who follow my work are whatever particular identity? Coaches, consultants, course creators, like that's something that comes up a lot, right? Or the people who I could say my biggest audiences are copywriters, or specifically financial copywriters. I could identify these different identities that are biggest within my audience, right? And so I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, okay, if I were to take my big generic offer and I were to focus it on this particular identity, is that something that makes sense, right? And there's lots of different ways that we can identify, that we can define identity. And so I have it split up into personal and professional here. Things like gender and race and cultural identity, right? Those are clear personal identities. So weight loss for women versus weight loss for men, or fitness for women versus fitness for men, healthcare for women versus healthcare for men, Financial stuff feels like it should not be the same, but there are definitely people who identity niche. I speak to women about their finances. I speak to men about finances, right? I speak to fathers. I speak to parents. I speak to mothers. I speak to busy professionals versus I speak to retirees, right? There's, well, we're starting to get in the professional thing there, but there is some level of personal identity in there. Any kind of relationship. So I was talking about parents. I was talking about married versus unmarried versus single, right? Anything like that is representative of relationships. Spirituality also fits under this personal thing, right? Any kind of personal beliefs there. Professional, that can be market or industry, that can be career or professional role. So let me demonstrate the difference there. You could speak to everybody in the IT industry versus you could speak to all marketers versus you could speak to marketers in the IT industry, and that's different kind of niching, right? So you're going to focus, and the more specific, the more narrow you get with these. So if you said, I want to speak to female marketers in the IT industry with at least 5 years experience, that's going to be a much narrower, much smaller audience. But if you are truly resonating with those people and that audience is big enough to support whatever you're doing, that could potentially be a very lucrative niche for you. The other thing about professional is you can consider aspirational a professional identity. And so, you know, I see it a lot in any kind of business opportunity, including copywriting, where people who want to be copywriters are a rather large audience. People who want to be entrepreneurs are a rather large audience, right? Side hustlers. It's aspirational, but it's still relative to a professional identity. In the context of all of this, though, I will challenge you, if you're just trying to niche to get rich, you have to ask yourself, do you have believability? So if I was going, like, if I talk to financial copywriters, I have way more believability there than if I were to want to talk to, women marketers in the IT industry with at least 5 years of experience doing marketing for IT companies. I have some believability in the context of marketing, but it's much harder for me to speak to them in a way where they will believe that I'm able to connect with them inside their niche. If I make that my focus, it's going to be less believable, right? And so when you think about this, there is an important difference that as soon as you cross any threshold of believability where you plant a seed of doubt as to whether or not you can adequately serve that niche, your ease with which that niche will pay off for you will go down dramatically, and you would be more and more likely to run into a situation where even though you better niched this offer, that it just did not work out. It just would not work out for you. So you want to implement a niche change. First thing I would suggest, so like with a coaching offer, you want to test and implement it. So you decide, okay, I'm going to figure out how to target dad entrepreneurs about their fitness goals, right? I'm going to help dad entrepreneurs with their health and fitness. And so what you want to do is not just completely build a brand new offer and all of that for dad entrepreneurs to help them with their fitness goals. You may have some generic fitness coaching offer, right? What you would want to do is do some kind of rapid, efficient testing. So find a dad entrepreneurs group, right? And put a message in front of them that provided value to them in the context of fitness, right? And have a limited conversation with them that is rapid, efficient testing just to see how responsive that audience is before you go and you build out an entire new offer for them and a new marketing program. So initially you just want to test it to get some kind of traction of people, are people interested in this message at all? And then you actually want to go through with the transformation itself. And going back to what I said earlier, you know, an ideal situation would be like a 90-10 offer transformation where you're changing 10%. You're changing like the introduction to what you do with the coaching. You're changing, you know, the new coachee enrollment process. You're changing a couple action guides. You're changing a few things like that, but 90% of what you're doing in your offer remains the same, and only 10% is customized, even primarily in language itself versus across the board, right? But 10% is customized to that audience. And then you start to make the front end changes to your marketing. You build out a new website or a new portion of your website that's focused on that particular audience, right? You change the marketing almost last in terms of building up a presence in that market, but you will have already done some efficient testing first in order to figure that out. So I hope that makes sense. Like the biggest takeaway that I have here at the end of this though is like if you want to be successful in a niche, number one, don't just make it, I have to like niche after niche after niche. Part of the thing that makes you successful in a niche is you really start to understand that niche. You start to learn that niche. You start to adapt and really solve the unique manifestation of this problem in that niche for those particular people, right? And those people are most likely going to raise their hand and be interested if you are speaking to them on some kind of identity level. Like I fill these roles in my life. I am this identity in my life, and I want this problem solved. If you really are able to resonate with like one or a couple small niches and then build from there, that's going to be how you're going to be most successful with this niching down of your offer. And I hope that makes sense. My call to action for you in this episode is to ask yourself, how can you use this? Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get more content like this delivered to you. I do offer a Launch Your Client Business free mini course that gets more specific about building offers for a specific audience. And that is available with a link in the description. I will also link to my streaming library of copywriting marketing courses called BTMSinsiders. And don't forget, there is that link to ask me your question if you would like it answered in an upcoming Mailbox Monday episode. I'm Roy Furr, this Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, and I'll catch you again next time. See you soon. Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.